Welcome back to another high-level match of StarCraft 2. What I've got for you today is a Protoss versus Zerg, where in game number 1 we find ourselves on the map Equilibrium. Spawning right here in the top left-hand corner, playing with the red Zerg drones. From Canada, we have Scarlett, and her opponent in the top right, playing with the blue Protoss pieces. He's from Croatia, and he goes by the name of Goblin. It's been a little while since I've last featured Goblin on the channel. I know there's a lot of Goblin fans out there because he definitely does like to play some cheeky strategies. The last few times I've seen him play StarCraft 2, he was very fond, well, of SkyToss. It's been a little bit for me as well, so we'll see what he's been cooking up recently. That being said, yeah, I've mentioned recently that Radusat Station does not seem to be a very popular map, and ever since then, we've seen the map a lot more frequently. That was a couple weeks ago. Equilibrium, another map that is very uncommon, especially in any of the versus Zerg matchups. So Protoss versus Zerg and Terran versus Zerg. Terrans and Protoss do not want to play on, well, this map against Zerg, primarily because of this base right over here. It's something that the Zerg players can take very easily. There's golden minerals, and on top of that, we also have a rich Vespian geyser. So at this point, Goblin's scouting around the main base here of Scarlett. He will see that, yeah, there's not a whole lot going on there. I mean, it's technically possible, I guess, that there could be like a proxy hatchery on the other side of the map, and I believe that Goblin was prepared against something like that as well. We've seen that from Dark recently, but I think on Equilibrium, it's safe to assume that it is indeed going to be that very quick, rich base. Now, how do you deal with this as a Protoss player? So it's important to note that the main advantage of this base for Zerg is that it's going to give you the same level of income as a standard 8 mineral field blue base with 2 regular gas geysers, but with far less workers, right? So the golden minerals, they return 7 minerals a trip rather than a conventional 5. The rich Vespian geyser returns 8 gas a trip rather than a conventional 4. And the math basically, it basically comes down to the fact that you can mine this base with far less workers and get a similar level of income. What exactly can you do though as Protoss, right? So there's obviously a mirrored location like that as well on the other side of the map, but this is a difficult one for Protoss to acquire, whereas for Zerg, yeah, you don't really mind that there's an extra opening over here in the back. You can just sort of maneuver your units around the map a little bit easier, whereas for Protoss, you really do rely on your wall-offs, and it's just not really an option here in the earlier stages of the game here for Goblin. So, it looks like it's just going to be a Stargate opener. We're going to be going for the Adept. When this map was first introduced, it seemed to me that a lot of Protoss players were really trying to shut this down as hard as possible, but recently they've just sort of gone for their normal openers instead, because the aggressive versions, they just don't really seem to work out all too well. The rush distance is also pretty long towards this base, especially for ground units. Link speed is now already like, what, 75% of the way done, and it's going to be hard to really get much done with Adepts and, for example, Stalkers as soon as the Links do find their wings. Okay. This is, by the way, from the WTL, the World Team League. Just like yesterday's series of Maru versus Serral. I'll go ahead and post a link to that one down below in the description of this video, because that was an absolute banger of a match. I heard that this one is really good too, but I recommend you go ahead and check out the Serral versus Maru series after, well, hopefully completing this cast. It's one of the very best games of StarCraft that I've seen recently. Yeah, I heard that this series is a little bit different, a lot more cheeky, a lot more aggressive, but there's no denying that the Serral versus Maru one was also a best of 2. So in case you're unfamiliar, a best of 2 series, I mean, I explained this yesterday, but long story short, it's all about map score rather than, so in a tournament format, it's all about map score rather than the individual series. So there is a chance that this is going to be a 1-to-1, and it may be a little bit unsatisfying if that ends up being the case. I don't know. I haven't seen the games yet, but Scarlett, by the way, went for a very quick Roach Warren. She also just scouted the gas timings over here perfectly of the Protoss Natural, which is gonna give her the heads up that this will not be something super aggressive here from Goblin. Third Nexus has been scouted. I think she's about ready to go for an attack. That being said, there are drones over here. Okay, those are certainly misplaced. In the natural expansion, the queens are already marching across the map. We do still have 2 queens in the main base. New queen coming up here as well over at the 3rd. Alright, 4 workers is not bad at all. But the question is, can Goblin hold on against this queen attack that is just gonna hit like an absolute truck, because Scarlett's economy with these golden minerals is just so powerful. I don't think there's a whole lot you can do here. Scarlett actually missed macroing, making now 6 overlords at the same time. Keep in mind that she's doing this off of a relatively small economy as well, so worker count is really not that big. It looks to me, yeah, it looks to Scarlett as well, the queens are already marching back home, that Goblin is just gonna give up on this base altogether. Okay, free Nexus. Awkward situation now though, because yes, that natural expansion is not gonna be... there's no way that's gonna be broken, I don't believe in that. Oracle's going in, by the way, getting a couple more kills. Yes, the third base here is gone. Yes, the Protoss economy has been hindered, but the worker count here for Protoss is still bigger than that of the Zerg. So Goblin, despite having less workers available, or sorry, less bases available, does have more workers, and he's gonna be able to kill so many drones. Scarlett still lacking a spore crawler in her natural expansion. That is gonna be incredibly costly. The Lings over here, I mean, they're dancing back and forth, but that's so many shield batteries. I don't see how that is gonna be broken. Props to Scarlett for trying, but that is way more workers going down than I think she had anticipated. 19 drones and still no spore crawler. Lovely control right here, of course, by the Protoss player, who now decides to go into the fleet beacon. So this is a very quick fleet beacon, all things considered. We have 4 additional gateways coming up. Blink is also researching. There's the +1 ground weapons for Protoss, and there's the second Stargate. So normally there's a few more steps that you take as far as your tech route goes before you go straight into Skytoss, but apparently Goblin is going to be making that transition right from the Blink Stalkers. Alright. Is it a good choice? I'm not exactly sure. Third Nexus here will be remade. The problem is, you can't really now commit to the Blink Stalker aggression, because you've just invested a lot of resources into things that aren't Blink Stalkers. There are going to be a load of gateways down, although obviously we also saw some of them falling here at the front. It's gonna be carriers. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. We've seen a lot of Tempest play as of late. Tempest seem to be very popular, especially Classic has found a lot of success with it. But Tempest from these very quick fleet beacons usually are like almost like a timing attack. You're trying to catch the Zerg player off guard, and this is Scarlett who's already at lair. She's already going into an infestation pit as well, so I don't believe that going into Tempest in this particular game would be a very good choice. Instead, it's going to be the more reliable... carrier. Now, lovely control right here on these oracles, though. 20, 30 drones. Ay, ay, ay. That is so many workers going down. I want to say at least half of those were unnecessary. But hey, they've gone down, and Goblin, he saw an opportunity, and he took it. Considering all of this early game aggression, though, that is still a very quick Mothership. Mothership on the production tab, 8 minutes into the game. Hive also, all things considered here, very quickly. Alright. Oracles are hungry for more. Yeah, only a very small amount of units have actually gone down here for Goblin. So, 30 drones, 28 links, 1 roach. That is not really what you're looking for right here as the Zerg, especially that worker count is just much too big, but Scarlett is expanding all over the map. So only really just now is where the Zerg player has caught up in the worker count. But this is also the moment where Goblin has re-secured his third, so this becomes a very awkward game. Yeah, it is ultimately going to be a Zerg advantage economically, but this will also be a Protoss army that can trade very cost efficiently. Scarlett at this point is not aware of this... No, she is aware. Oh, okay, I was gonna say, I thought she didn't actually get a scout of this, but she is aware of the carrier transition. Surprisingly enough, she's going into Hydras together with Vipers. Now, don't get me wrong, Hydras are an amazing unit. The problem is that Hydras also die amazingly fast. The thing is, though, that Goblin has skipped High Templar, he has skipped Colossi, he has skipped Disruptors, he's gone straight from Stalkers into Skytoss, and maybe that will make it okay for the Zerg player to play Hydra Viper against Skytoss instead. Now, this Mothership, it's just rallied straight towards the other side of the map. I think we're gonna be going for a mass recall towards the side of the Zerg, And preferably inside of the main base. This is one of my favorite moves. We don't really commonly see it, but it's so powerful. Look at these units clumping up. They're gonna be recalled in the direction of the Mothership, who just so happens to be inside of the main base of the Zerg. Unleash the interceptors. It's very important that you have all of them out. Would love to see some stasis wards over here as well on the ramp. All right, well, those abductions are gonna hit like a truck. We do have a nice, we do have a nice bubble over here, slowing this all down. Main base, though, in a world of trouble. 13 drones on top of the drones that already fell earlier. I've got a feeling that this hive will also go down. Okay, we got one more force field. We do get a force field. I think we needed some stasis wards in this area of the map to maybe make it a little bit more difficult for the Zerg player to advance. 14 drones go down together with the hive, but that was very costly for Goblin. Can we maybe get a recall going? Okay, not quite clumping up the units there. Ultimately, I think that was actually a very good trade for Scarlett. The execution wasn't quite perfect there from Goblin. Very cool move, but I think he messed up the stasis there in the main base, and there was really no reason for him to fight all of that Zerg infrastructure over here. He should have been fighting from the top section of the main base instead, so the units on the low ground with those force fields wouldn't be able to go up. Anyhow, this immediately triggers now a counterattack here from Scarlett. Keep in mind that she does have all those glass cannons still going around, and there's still no storm or anything available for Goblin to properly deal with it. We do have a couple blinding clouds going down as well on Stalkers. Not something we normally have. Hydras, Roaches, and Ravagers, though, fighting into a choke point. Battery overcharge helping out a tremendous amount as well. I really don't like this position here for Scarlett. And despite the fact that Goblin is 60 supply behind, he's actually pushing back these Zerg units. Lovely work. Okay. Hive number 2. It's coming up. Zerg has been expanding all over the bottom section of the map, though. Those golden minerals, they're going to be running out very soon, but I think, yeah, I still prefer this position significantly for Scarlett. Storm is coming. We do have a decent army here to round things out, but yeah, Goblin has decided, yo, I'm not going to really stick around on my Skytles anymore. Instead, I'm just going to be going for a ground-based army, but I think Scarlett will be more than happy with that too. She doesn't have a Baneling Nest, so the Baneling Nest has been a little controversial as of late. Let's leave it at that, okay? It's been a structure that we haven't seen all too much in most of the matchups, other than against Terran Bio. Mostly just because the unit is not quite as powerful anymore, but I do believe it would be a good choice in this particular game. That being said, Scarlett right now going straight into the Lurker Den with the +3 missile upgrade now queued up as well. These Lynx are not going to be able to kill that base. Good stasis wards over here by Goblin, slowing down the advancement of this army once more. Storm right now will finally be done. Yeah, and that's gonna be a very handy unit. That's why I'm suggesting Banelings here, because those High Templar, I mean, it's gonna be difficult to pick them off. There's a good Storm, beautiful feedbacks, lovely work! Blanketing on top of all of those Hydras and Lings. That was most of the energy out of all of those Templar, though, but at the very least, Goblin forces the Zerg player to back off one more time. New expansion once more coming up. +2 air weapons, together with the +3 ground weapons, being researched at the same time. That's an interesting combo. Not usually what we see, but it makes sense in this game. Especially if we do plan on making more carriers. I mean, this guy's a bit lonely right now. Even carriers need friends. Interceptors alone are not gonna cut it, okay? Bob Ross would never let a carrier be by himself. No, even carriers need friends. Although I think most Zerg players out there would disagree. It's like, no, Lowko. They most definitely do not. So Scarlett's unit composition here, I'm not in love with it, but it's still strong. Especially with Lurkers coming up, it is going to be more powerful, but I would not mind seeing a Spire as well. I think a Spire would be a lovely choice. Vipers, a little bit exposed, but not quite able to get the low HP one. Scarlett forcing the Protoss here to split up their units. Where are those Templar? We have 6 of them. Alright, they're throwing water balloons over here at Zerglings, apparently. They're helping. Yo, don't be mean to them. They're helping. And you know what? I gotta compliment Goblin here. Not that long ago, he was so far behind in the supply count, but he's been doing a good job slowly building up his economy one more time. Now we're going for the golden base. Alright. Love to see it. No banelings available, so we can't really go for any roll buys over here. Although I wouldn't mind seeing another photon cannon in that mineral line. Mothership is gonna be out very soon once again. Yeah, I think more carriers here would be a really nice choice. The clock is ticking though for this Zerg army composition. Without any corruptors, I don't know if I'm in love with this. We really need more carriers. Ugh. Loads of probes going down, by the way, to that Zergling run by. Who needs banelings anyways? Can we get a battery overcharge? I guess we may try to save it over here for the main fight, but suddenly Goblin is forced to put out multiple fires at once, and he's done a good job dealing with at least some of them, but now it's 34 probes down the drain in just a matter of seconds. It looks like the Nexus is not going to be too far behind either. Now we finally fire up some additional carriers, but I think they should have been out. Goblin probably not aware here of the fact that the Zerg was gonna go for that transition towards towards Lurkers. He may have also assumed that Scarlett indeed was going into Corruptors, and therefore the carriers weren't really an option in his mind anymore, but... Okay, now it's suddenly getting very costly. 40 probes down the drain. Goblin's army is still bigger than that of the Zerg, so 118 supply versus Scarlett's 92. But Scarlett has a lot of money in the bank, and she's going to be able to remax multiple times. I think at this point, the best strategy you can do here as Protoss is just one bulldozer attack. Try to make one really strong army and march through the center of the map and destroy everything. The problem is, it's very hard to do that against Vipers as well as Lurkers. Yeah, you see a lot of those units already dying on the low ground, and if you add to that a few abductions... Every unit right now is worth its weight in gold, right? It's not really possible here for Goblin. Well, he's gonna try, but I don't think it's really possible for him to macro his way out of this situation. The worker count is just not sufficient anymore. That's a Templar going down. Scarlett's been taking all of the bases on her side of the map. And I've got a feeling that this army is the only army that Goblin's gonna be able to produce. 2 carriers, though, coming up. Maybe we can add 2 more Archons in the mix. It is a scary force. The thing is, Scarlett right now is trying to suffocate her opponent. There we go. There's one abduction. Lovely work. Baiting the Archons into the range right here of the Lurkers, too. Good storms. Lovely storms. But ultimately, I think this is just going to end up being a numbers game. Zerg can reinforce this much faster. Third Nexus now in a world of trouble again as well. That attempted fourth here a little bit to the left. Also not looking all too stable. Slow pushing forward here with the Lurkers. Lovely control here by Scarlett. GG is cold. And game number 1 of this best of 2 series goes in favor of the Zerg. Huh. Raduset Station is game number 2. You know, ever since I complained that we never really get to see this map, I've been seeing this map a whole lot. I don't really know exactly how map vetoes work in the WTL. There's a good chance that all maps just sort of get played and they just have to choose what player goes out on what map, right? So there's a good chance that these players didn't have a say in the maps that they're playing on, or at the very least they were just chosen to, well, come out against the opponent here. Raduset Station game number 2, Equilibrium game number 1. That's a really interesting situation. Anyhow, Goblin, what are we gonna do? I mean, he didn't play poorly by any stretch. It's just that Equilibrium is a super hard map. I'm actually gonna look up the win rates, okay? Let me see. How do you write that word? Equilibrium, Liquipedia. So Liquipedia keeps track of all the tournament games that are being played on that map. Apparently 53 Zerg versus Protoss games have been played on that map so far, and about 57% of them have gone in favor of the Zerg. Terran versus Zerg has a win rate for Terran of 37%. Yeah, so overall, Equilibrium just seems to be a Zerg favorite map, and I would say also it's fair to assume that Scarlett is overall a slightly better player than Goblin. I think Goblin did a great job though, with a few a few small improvements, I think that attack in the main base after the mass recall could have been a lot more impactful. Like, we really only needed to split off the sentries to be in range of the ramp. It's not like they are really contributing to the damage that they're dealing to those structures anyway, so split off the sentries from the main pack, make sure that they are in range of force fielding the main ramp of the Zerg. Then have the rest of the Stalker Skytles army, right, further up north, and have the Oracles lay down stasis wards in case the Zerg do manage to sneak somehow, some way past those force fields. I think that would have allowed Goblin to deal like twice as much damage at the very least, and probably also recall his army again in time. Yeah, and I think if that would have happened, that game would have looked very different, because Scarlett, well, in this particular, the game we would just watch, she only really needed to rebuild the Hive, which does take a little bit of time, but it's really not the end of the world. Really, the only thing it shuts down, I guess, is Vipers at that point in the game, right? So you can't make Vipers until you have a Hive. Or I guess unless you have a Hive. But that's really the only thing that got shut down. She just instantly remade a lair, instantly remade a Hive, and that was about it. Yeah, a little bit unfortunate. Nice cleanup though by Scarlett. Excellent crisis management. Very easy to mess that sort of thing up. But ultimately it was the Vipers, I guess, that messed Goblin up a little bit in that scenario. There is also a chance that Goblin didn't see that the opponent already had a Hive until he got to the other side of the map. I'm not exactly sure about his vision at that stage in the game, but if he didn't know there was a Hive, because, you know, that was a Queen March, and we still had like a Hive done at the 8-minute mark. So there's a good chance that he assumed that the opponent wouldn't have Vipers yet, which would explain his army positioning. Anyhow, little bit better scouting would certainly not be misplaced, but his Oracle control was very good, at the very least when it came to killing drones in that previous match. Now, Radusat Station, it's got that really nicely tucked away, yeah, in-base expansion. We're gonna be knocking down those mineral fields already, and it looks like Goblin wants to go for a very quick, safe third Nexus. I say really quick. This is also the timing that we normally see a third coming down in a regular game of StarCraft 2. About 3 minutes and 45 seconds is not really that odd. Okay. There's the Oracle. Zerg not going for the pocket base as their third base, because they would have to send out a couple of drones. Instead, we'll probably see that as the fourth base for the Zerg instead. Spore Crawler's coming out. I would love to see a Spore Crawler in every single mineral line this game, Scarlett. I think that would be a very nice option. Keep in mind that Zerg still ended up winning the game, despite the fact that she lost, like, what, 50 drones? Maybe even more, in, like, the first 10 minutes of it. Twilight Council coming up on the back of this. Looks like we had a small little supply block, but curious to see what sort of tech we're going for. It's once again going to be a forge. So we had a similar setup in the previous game for Goblin, but this time around there's really not a whole lot that the Zerg can do to try and mess with this base. Right, so a Queen March on Radusat Station just doesn't really work at this level of play, because not only do you have to rush across the map, which takes ages, those queens have to wander like for an additional 15 seconds or so, but then you also have to go up a ramp around a corner. It really does not help. So not really an option right here for Scarlett to go into any sort of yeah, queen aggression, other than maybe with like a Knight as Worm, or I guess if you really want to, you could maybe bring a Dropper Lord as well, but everything she's doing so far here is considered to be the normal Zerg macro opener. So she's defending against the Oracles. She's lost one drone so far, but other than that, nothing all too crazy. Standard timing on the Lair, standard timing on the Roach Warren. Looks like we're just gonna power out as many workers as possible. Really? Huh. So Goblin's doing it 2 games in a row. I mean, he didn't get slowed down in any way in this game, or I guess slowed down. Apparently slowed down is not the correct tense. We're once again going into a Fleet Beacon and a second Stargate, as Blink and +1 aren't even done yet. I don't know if I'm in love with that. Maybe it's really good, but it kind of feels like we're going from like an early mid-game unit straight towards the latest game unit that we can possibly make, but there's usually a very good reason to have some form of splash damage before you go into that Skytles army. Although I guess recently we haven't seen a lot of Skytles in general, other than those Tempest attacks. Is this gonna be... No, it's not gonna be Tempest. It's gonna be straight carriers. +1 flyer upgrades, +1 air weapons here for the Protoss coming up. The problem is, on this particular map, Zerg players seem to be very fond of playing mutas in general, or at the very least, they tend to go for very quick Spire play. This will be something that I think Goblin is going to be able to see. If he threw down a Revelation, he would notice it. Okay, not quite. Alright, so he doesn't know. Problem is, if Zerg is blindly going to a Spire, and they get a smell of carriers, right? They can sniff it out. They will go straight into Corruptors, which makes it very difficult for these carriers really to get much done. Also, I'm a little confused by the amount of gateways in the Blink upgrade. Now we're going into Charge as well. Is Goblin just doing like a bit of a turtle army? I guess that's what we're doing. We're just sitting back, we're just chilling, and we're slowly building up towards a 200 supply while harassing with just a bunch of oracles. Alright, the mineral wall together with the debris wall has been mined out. We're gonna go ahead and now take the golden minerals. This one is relatively easy to take. Normally we have the 4th base going down over here, but apparently Goblin has decided to go for the golden minerals this time around. And you know what? I think that's pretty dang good. Now Zerg is gonna come across the map with roaches and zerglings, and last time I checked, roaches and zerglings are not that good against carriers. Where are those mutas at though? Scarlett's saving up even more. Yeah, 12 of them are coming. Oracles will get a glimpse of it, so that's nice. Hatchery is not going to happen here. Zerglings and roaches are looking to fight over here, but now the carriers have been spotted. Maybe the mutas, though, can create a distraction. Scarlett's actually doubling down on muta play. So mutas are not actually a good choice against fighting any Protoss unit, really, unless you have many of them. But they're fantastic at harassing Protoss players, because these units are fast. Once again, though, Oracle's going to town over here in that pocket base. Getting a bunch of drones as well to match that of the Zerg. Recall is going to be used, so they're going to be saved against those mutas for now. There's no way you can fight this. I mean, we're gonna... Oh my god, I don't like that at all, Scarlett. Lovely play, of course, here by Goblin. Baiting the battery overcharge and the Zerg army to jump all on top of that. But the golden base lives, and that's super important here. Interesting. So I actually kind of assumed that the timing of the carriers would lead to some sort of attack. But I think what Goblin is trying to do is just max out. I think he's basically just sitting here and he's waiting until he maxes out, and then he will go for an attack. He's basically just a punching bag, harassing the opponent with a bunch of oracles. But other than that, we're just trying to go up to like 200 supply, which is a strategy that we've historically seen a lot. It's just something that over the last few years of StarCraft 2 has really not been a very popular approach. Corruptors are coming. Scarlett's got a very solid economy here, so she can produce quite a few of these units all at the same time. Probes are falling here as well. Corruptors and mutas on the same control group. Looks a little bit funny, but I guess it does make sense. Yeah, so Goblin's goal here is to make a death ball. Are we gonna be able to get that maxed out Protoss army going, and can we just bulldoze towards the other side of the map? We're only a few minutes away here from the Protoss player maxing out, and Zerg really needs to get an army going to try and address all of this. Okay, Corruptors here doing a fantastic job targeting down all of those carriers one at a time. We do have the Archons right now moving forward as well, stepping underneath the Corruptors. That was expensive. A lot more of those Corruptors will end up going down, but there was also, I think, 2 carriers in total for 6 Corruptors. 21 mutas, though. That fight didn't look great for the Protoss because these units are very expensive, but that wasn't actually that bad. These Corruptors are not the cheapest unit in the world either. Keep in mind that there's still golden minerals here for Mr. Goblin, and that income is gonna be very, very nice to have. Yeah, so I think we're basically not going for much of an attack until we're maxing out. Another base coming down. Here's the +3 as well for Goblin, so he's gonna have a very powerful army. It's an interesting combination. So I thought in the previous game we kind of just got there randomly. Right, Goblin going for the +3 ground and the +2 air at the same time, but I think we're doing it on purpose. Goblin's Archon count here is growing as well, and the Archon is really good against everything that Zerg has currently got. Ooh, Ooh, they could have almost picked up a couple of those reinforcing carriers. No Mama ship in the mix this time around. Okay. If the Archons get underneath and they can start zapping away against these clumped up units, life is pretty good. Good save there as well, though, by that shield battery. And that's an additional bunch of Corruptors going down. Only one additional carrier, it seems. Well, that being said, this one is going to be low, and I do believe it is going to be... No! No, Scarlett! Ah, that reminds me of my own ladder games. I think I'm doing alright, and then I don't pay attention to my units for a little bit. That is possibly the worst thing that could have happened here. Goblin right now, maxed out. The death ball status has been achieved. Can he go for the full bulldozer through the center of the map and gobble up all of those Zerg units? And I think that is exactly what we're witnessing right now. We're walking into a couple of the biles as well with some of the units that we're trailing behind, but that is just because we're trying to get those Archons to the front as quickly as possible. Still a lot of Archons in the back too, though, so yeah, they're adding on so much damage. We don't even have a prism to reinforce this. There's not even an observer in the mix to kill all of the creep, but it does not happen. Goblin maxed out, he got a bunch of those Corruptors, and he told his army to go. So game number 2 is indeed gonna be going in favor of the Protoss.